Thank you so much. Hi, I'm Carly Langley. I'm with Karlin Real Estate, and if we haven't met, or you haven't met anyone at Karlin, we're actually here in Austin. We're one of Austin's largest owner-developers with about 5 million square feet here, and kind of in our DNA at Karlin, a lot of what we do, this is a really relevant topic to us on the landlord side. We're really creative as a landlord, and we work with large end users and kind of solving for this elephant in the room of these giant campuses and large portfolios, and we like to sit down and get really creative. Kind of in our DNA, we typically like to get bullish and acquire these large campuses, help people like the folks on this stage consolidate, get really smart and creative. So I'm very excited to get to have this conversation, but you know, it's not about me, it's about the people on the stage. So I thought they could introduce themselves and maybe share a bit about who they are and kind of set the scene with how big your portfolios are and markets you're in, how many people you get to house. Maybe Kathy, my Austin sister.
Yeah. So, hi everybody, I'm Kathy Carr. I'm from NXP Semiconductors. I am Global Head of Real Estate and Workplace Experience. It's a really long title. We have about 78 locations in 23 countries with a little over 15 million square feet of space. It's about 33,000 employees. And we're actually small for a semiconductor company, just so you know. We're small. And what else did you want to know, Carly?
I think you killed it.
Killed it. And I just found out as we were talking before here that all three of us, unbeknownst to us, are huge Stephen King fans.
So we can discuss that.
Yes, if we get bored
Not
with this,
me.
killer clowns are
Killer
on the,
clowns are,
they're on the agenda.
Oh, and by the way, I thought I would blend in with the background today, so therefore I thought it was perfect.
Wonderful. I do not care for Stephen King, but
It's an acquired taste.
but Dawn.
Hi,
take it
everyone.
away.
Don Watson. I lead Oracle's Global Real Estate and Facilities Management Organization. We have about 26 million square feet, and we expect anywhere from 9 to 10 million of it to actually be vacant with some of the initiatives that we have going on. We have about 160,000 employees globally. We're across all markets, Europe, the Americas, JPAC region. Probably which about 33% are currently considered remote, and then the rest of them, you know, somewhere between what we consider flexible or assigned, but probably then another 10 to 15% of them are in denial and not wanting to actually declare themselves remote, and their managers are probably even in more denial about not wanting to declare them remote also, which is hence the reason we have about 9 to 10 million square feet coming up vacant.
Today is about honesty and Stephen King.
That's it.
I'll tell you later how much empty space we have because it would blow your mind.
So Sara Andersen, I am head of real estate and workplace effectiveness for Genentech. I am like, you know, the baby of this group because not age-wise, but size-wise. So Genentech is in about 5 million square feet in South San Francisco, where we have about 12,000 employees, but we are the North American headquarters of Roche, which is bigger, about 40,000 employees globally. And so 5 million square feet in South San Francisco, but we are at 97% of pre-pandemic occupancy. So I don't have a lot of empty space. Like less than 10% of our employees have flexible work arrangements. But we have R&D labs and manufacturing. Like we were talking about that, Kathy. It's like you can't do those things at home.
They don't like it done in your garage.
Walter White aside.
I think the thing that kind of surprised me, the three people on this stage work for vastly different companies with products with completely different use cases, but every conversation we had to prep was similar. And we didn't want this to be negative, but it is the reality of what's happening in commercial real estate, and we all had really similar conversations. So I think my goal, and probably our goal on this stage, is to hopefully, at least we're bonding in this, hopefully learning and sharing, and we're all trying to figure this out together. So, Sara, when we spoke, I think something you talked about, and then we all kind of spoke about it, was this need to densify. As you look at these large portfolios and bringing energy into one space, I know you've had a lot of success in that arena, and I thought maybe you could share, and I think Dawn and Kathy could probably speak to this too, but how do you densify, when, where? I know that's a big, lofty question, but.
Well, we started sharing in our office work environments about 10 years ago. And we had.
Even ahead of it.
Yeah, we just,
great.
we were fortunate in that way. And we have the first building that we sort of did the shared work environments at scale. When we were bringing people back on a voluntary basis, I brought them all to that building because one, we wanted to keep them separate from the manufacturing and lab folks because it was still COVID, but also because you don't want to come back and then have nobody be there. So you wanted the buzz, and we've switched how we plan our occupancy now from a ratio based to utilization based, and I sort of joke like the giant sucking sound you hear at Upper Campus is Building 35. Just bring it. I mean, we just keep. Yeah, let's move those people in. Let's move those people in. So we're just moving a lot more people into this building, into not just that building, but we're trying to move people into a couple of the buildings that have the shared work environments because it just feels buzzier and feels better. And also, I made the comment about 97%. We also have a majority time on campus mandate. So let's be very clear. It is part of your job to work on campus because of the work that we do. So.
I know it's necessary, but we talked about a third of your office is lab and R&D, a third is manufacturing, a third is office. Even on the office side, I know it's probably still mandatory work. People need to collaborate, a buzzword of the weekend, but do they feel the pressure to be there on the office side, or they also need to be there as well?
I absolutely feel the pressure.
I think they should.
I thought it was a Genentech term, but I saw a friend of mine from Google was talking about coffee badging. Like people badge in, grab a cup of coffee, badge out. Little known fact is you can badge into the gym and it counts. But when we had the voluntary return, I asked my team to develop a dashboard. I said, we're going to get asked who's coming in, not to the individual level, but what business units are actually showing up. And so we developed that dashboard, and hindsight is 2020. I wish we'd never done that because we then became the hall monitors. And we have generated campus presence reports. And so you understand by business unit how people are showing up. We develop targets for each business unit based on pre-pandemic behaviors, understanding like which groups travel more, et cetera. So our last presentation to the executive committee was like, let's not do this anymore. Like we are where all we're monitors. Going to be.
That's funny.
Yeah, well, I mean,
it's true.
And like instead of studying the stuff I want to study, like mobility, like how are people moving through campus? What are they doing when they come? What's useful to them? What's not useful to them? I would love to know that more, but we lost a lot of time and resources to being a hall monitor.
Well, there you go. Wow, one of the joys of running a corporate real estate team. You're monitoring the halls. Don, what about you at Oracle?
Yeah, so I think very similar journeys. Our lines of business have the choice on how they want their people to come in. We do not have a corporate mandate, and there is no corporate mandate that we foresee coming down on the future. It really is going to kind of be up to each line of business to decide how they feel it is best to work. There is a lot going on now with distributed teams. I think I heard some of that discussion in yesterday's sessions and others about having teams all over the world now. So really trying to understand that purpose of coming in is definitely where we are. But from a real estate and facilities perspective, where we've found ourselves is, I think we have now close to about 30,000 seats that are just unallocated, vacant, no one's using them. But as we were going through a lot of the downsizing and consolidating, they're spread out all over the place. So yeah, they're just everywhere. So if you go multiple floors, you'll have pockets here, pockets here, pockets here. So right now where we are in this journey is really taking a very deep dive into how do we consolidate all of these spaces to get people into a tower of one of our large campuses. If you're familiar with our Redwood Shores campus in California, it has 6 towers. We're already out of 2 of those towers, and we're currently planning on how we kind of take all these cats and dog types of spaces we have and get it even further down, which will probably get us down to 2 towers in what is Oracle's kind of iconic, former corporate headquarters, because currently our headquarters are considered down here in Austin, Texas. And then that's going to start to lead us into a very interesting discussion with the executives on, okay, we are now in, 3 out of our 6 towers. Traditionally you would sublease that, but there's no market for that. So that is going to start leading into this discussion of who do you partner with, how do you develop these things. Obviously we'll put them on the sublease market, because why not? Might as well see what we can do there. But I do think it's going to lead to a very interesting kind of discussion around campus future planning, and are there partners we work with who may want to take one of those towers and completely redevelop it, which is not going to be cheap or easy, because obviously they were built for corporate occupancy. We own this. Yeah, honestly, the lease space is easy, because the lease expires and we're out. It's the owned campuses globally, and for us, that's really Austin. Similar issues in Austin, Redwood Shores. In Santa Clara, we have a campus that is mostly designated to what we consider kind of lab space. Very different from what pharmaceutical lab space would look like, but in that campus, we've actually divided it up, and we're working with the town on property lines and sewer connections and power, so that it can be developed by somebody else for probably multifamily, multi-use type of things, while we'll keep our section. So that's a little, that was an easier one for us versus a Redwood Shores or what we would do in Austin. We have a similar huge operation in Bangalore in India, where we have 8 buildings that we know we can get down to 3. And so we're going through that planning process now of trying to, first talk to the lines of business, because as I said earlier, you do run into this interesting discussion of them. I swear to God, we probably have, 80% of our employees must just piggyback on badging, because apparently our badging information is always inaccurate, because people are piggybacking. It's the number one thing you hear from all lines of business. Well, they're piggybacking, obviously. So that's probably about 80,000 employees a day.
Turnstiles.
That are in Bangalore. So let me talk to you about some of your excess.
So that's kind of that's the journey we're currently on, and I think was why one of the, this topic was kind of an interesting one from my perspective, because I do think there's a lot of us, when I talk to different groups, who are trying to figure out how do we redevelop kind of those owned campuses that, are their legacy from that standpoint. They've been around for, almost as long as some of, as soon as those companies got viable and got a huge thing of cash, they started buying campuses to build out.
Yeah.
Which is a perfect segue into Kathy, what you're doing. So Kathy recently got this amazing role, so congratulations.
Thank you. Today I'm 90 days into this position.
Let's go. But with this amazing new job comes some vintage product and vintage, which I'm excited to get to tour soon, hopefully. I know it was 1.5 million feet.
Well, that's just one campus in Austin. So we have 2 campuses in Austin. We have one in Chandler. We're all in China. I have multiple. Singapore, I have manufacturing. In Vietnam, I have manufacturing. So
already a pro at 90 days in. You're on it.
You memorize your portfolio as best you can. I should tell you guys that I handle everything outside the factory walls, okay? If it's inside the factory walls, that is facilities, industrial, it is manufacturing. I don't touch it unless they shut it down and they want me to sell it. So for our owned campuses, we are probably on average, with the exception of manufacturing, less than 50% occupied or utilized in there. Some of them it's down to 30%. In our lease spaces where we have a lot of labs, and of course, you know this, everybody who's in a lab says, no, we're in there every day, all the time. And we look at badge in and badge out, and no, they're not.
They're piggybacking.
You're right. Well, they're in a lab. I'm like, for goodness sakes, I've had a camera in that lab for weeks, and there's been nobody in there. So it's really hard. And a lot of our assets, just so you know, the NXP, Motorola split off and formed a Freescale Semiconductor. So they split their manufacturing and their R&D. I started my corporate career when that split off happened with Freescale Semiconductor to come in and right-size that portfolio for Freescale. Freescale got purchased by NXP in 2017. NXP spun off from Philips, so they are the manufacturing arm. We tend to own all of our manufacturing facilities because we need to control that process and everything that goes on. We have to fortify with redundant power because if a line goes down, we lose chips. It can get to $1 million of losing chips if electricity goes out. So it's difficult. So we have a very old portfolio. Some of these vintage. No, they're just old, okay? 40 plus years. I hadn't been in the Freescale, in the NXP Oak Hill campus since 2010. And when I was there, it was 1980s era. They're 6-foot tall cubes, the gray, really heavy ones. You couldn't move them an inch. They're all on, the built-up floors, right? And I'd have to jump to look over the top. And I walked in 90 days ago, and I went, oh my God, it hasn't changed. It is still exactly the same. So while the world was moving on to workplace and beautiful artwork and murals, I get these stark white walls, these hallways that are as wide as this room, because they get to move big machinery through them, right? And these gray cubes, and I showed Carly a picture, row after row, entire floors, there's nobody there. And I'm of the belief that you have to show the behavior that you want. So I come in the office and I'm by myself. There's literally nobody around me. One day I stood up and went, hello. Nothing. There was nothing there. And I got lost trying to find my way for a one-on-one with somebody who was there in person. There was no wayfinding. I literally got lost and then tried to use my phone, and I had no cell service. And it took me 35 minutes just to wander back to where I started and then send an email that said, I can't find you. So 1.5 million square feet in the Oak Hill campus of Austin, Texas. We have one small line of manufacturing that's there. I don't know what the future of that line will be, but I know that it's multiple buildings. There are probably about 6 or 7 buildings that have been cobbled together with air-conditioned walkways in between them. We have a front lobby and a rear lobby and a side lobby. Only the front lobby is now staffed by guards because it costs a lot of money to have guards 24/7. All of us have to badge in and out. It's mandatory, and they don't piggyback because we have these really high things. You'd literally have to jump, and they slam shut. You are not getting in unless you badge in and out. So I have real data. And so what are we going to do with it? That's the question that they asked me when I interviewed for this. And I said, oh my God, this is a perfect spot. You've got executive housing, you've got multifamily, you've got retail. Yeah, we got a crappy highway being built right here, but once that's done, straight shot to the airport, downtown, the hill country, the lake. It's in a great spot. I said, let me sell it. And they said, who are you going to sell it to? And I went, well, I know some folks who love to buy these campuses, and maybe
we're going to do a deal on the stage right now.
Maybe,
then they're going to do a deal in Bangalore.
Yeah, my boss is right there. He's like, please don't, please.
No, but literally, I've seen what they can do and what other developers can do with these campuses, and I said, this isn't the place for us anymore. There's no longer a need, even for manufacturing companies, to have something where you build in the daycare, the gym, all of those amenities and everything. If you think of what Oracle and Google and Meta have all done, they're locating in dense urban areas. And let other people build those amenities. And then you go make deals to give your employees discounts to go eat there.
I do want to ask about the urban environment versus suburban, which I think everyone on this stage has, well, actually, you'll have to share with the audience, but difference between this trend toward more of an urban mixed-use office environment, which seems to be the trend. It's kind of always been trending that way, versus suburban. Do you have both in your portfolio? If so, how do you measure success against each sort of option? I think both have pros and cons. Sara, I know yours is a bit mixed, but curious to hear your thoughts on suburban versus urban.
Well, it's interesting. As I mentioned, we're owned by Roche. Roche's headquarters is in Basel. It's roughly the same square footage, but the footprint is this, and it's very tall. because it's, urban and European, and versus we are,
Spread.
also next to the airport, so we've got some height issues, and so we're very spread out. Like the floor area ratio, I think Basel's like 2.7, and ours is like 0.6. So when we talked about density, 0.6 floor area ratio is not conducive to feeling buzz. But manufacturing in an urban environment brings its own set of challenges.
Right.
And, in Basel, literally the two tallest buildings in the country of Switzerland are Roche buildings. So Roche has a lot more sway with the city of Basel than, we kind of do. Even though the city of South San Francisco, we've got a wonderful relationship. But manufacturing, especially when you involve chemicals for making drugs, and residential are not good bedfellows.
Right.
Little Jimmy gets a third eye, nobody's happy.
Sounds cool to me. I don't know.
That was the Stephen King part of the presentation.
Brought it back.
Yeah, no, we have the same problem. I mean, the manufacturing part of it is not conducive in being in an urban area. It just isn't. I mean, I don't know what you know about semiconductor companies, but it's kind of the same with pharmaceuticals. There's some really dirty chemicals that go into doing it, and it's good to keep it away. And also, we kind of have to have this land barrier between us and the next closest thing. So, the manufacturing can stay more or less in a suburban setting or in a campus-like setting. But I think the office work and even the lab work can move into an urban setting. And I honestly think that we waste a whole lot of money building cafeterias and staffing cafeterias and running these cafeterias and coffee shops and, fully staffed gyms. Don't get me wrong, they're beautiful amenities, but just pay for my membership at World Gym or whatever. Right. I mean, it's just as easy.
But you break the adjacency.
Pardon?
You break the adjacency.
Yeah, you do. And I think we have a campus. So our European headquarters, because we are a Dutch company, is in Eindhoven, Netherlands. And the American headquarters is this Oak Hill campus we're talking about. In Eindhoven, we have a corporate headquarter building, and probably within, I want to say, 45-minute train ride, we have a manufacturing area. And so people go back and forth between those campuses all day. But the office workers and the lab workers really like being in the urban area. They like that environment. And for our retention and attracting new workers and retention, if we find that we need to be there. And oh, by the way, I have to tell you, there is an age disparity between the people who work in manufacturing and the people who are doing the R&D and in the office. We have an older population in manufacturing. I mean, there's so much knowledge that they have in there and what they're doing. It's unbelievable. And then everyone in the office and the lab is younger. They're a younger population. So, I see another problem coming is we have to figure out how to transfer that manufacturing knowledge in there. But
right.
I can't do anything to affect people coming into the office. We don't mandate either. Again, manufacturing is different. They have to be there. In some cases, we're running 24/7 in our manufacturing facilities because y'all need your semiconductor chips. Your cars have them, your toasters have them, your watches, everything has a chip in it. So you need them. So we're running those, sometimes 3 lines, 3 shifts a day. But the office workers or the knowledge workers don't need to be there. And in these old campuses, it's dismal and depressing. And it costs money to fix that. And the money goes into R&D and manufacturing. Mm-hmm. And I think the reason why NXP has brought me in is I have to change their mindset of the way that they think about these knowledge workers. If I can shrink their footprint, their overall, how much space they lease, down to 1/3 of what they have now. And I literally believe it can be done. All of that money that's going into leases can then be spent initially to transform those workplaces. Manufacturing is going to be what it's going to be, but I think I can fix their workplace problems.
Yeah. What I would add to that is, so in our, for those of you familiar with the UK, we have a large campus up in Reading. And that campus was a beautiful campus when it was built, but as our workforce has changed and the dynamics of our business has changed, everything is absolutely shifting to London, downtown London. And so we are now left with this campus that is, sprawling out in Reading that, no one is going to. And so I think we're down to, I think there's like maybe 6 or 7 buildings there. We've shut a couple of them. We've been able to lease some out, but we now are faced with, with the real option that we're eventually going to have to shut that down and sell it. It just doesn't make sense to keep it open. And again, Reading's it's not this hot, it's not the hot place to be in that area. People are moving downtown. So what we're starting to really, I think, start to explore, which is outside of what Oracle has done in the past and somewhat out of the comfort zone, is how are we, talking to the government about, hey, what do you guys have on in the future that you're looking at as you redevelop different cities and different regions? There's been, the UK is really starting to think about their healthcare system and their hospitals. Our campus would be great for something like that, trying to connect with those folks. There's a lot of distribution and warehousing discussions that we're starting to have with different companies because that could potentially be an option. And then there's always is there that developer who we might do a partnership with?
We
who
do have a presence in the UK.
That would want to develop it as more of a mixed use type of environment. And I think that's where, it's just not one size for, and this is globally for us. There isn't just one option now. It really is trying to understand what are all the different options and things that people can bring to the table. And even in the U.S., we try to be a little bit careful with it, but it's even talking to different local governments, whether it's the city or the state level, to see what they're thinking about as we know our campuses are going to shrink or that we may exit a location. Where in the past we would have probably held that as close as possible because we wouldn't want to let them in on what's going on. But now we're finding if we really want to have a shot to redevelop these sites, which is better for everybody, being a little bit more transparent and having those discussions that, we say, hey, listen, we're trusting you to keep this secret and not run to the local news person who's going to report on real estate matters to really talk about, who's coming to you saying, hey, do you know where there's land or something? Because I have this idea, because we do want to talk to them and just see if there's an opportunity there.
And Redwood Shores, you guys right on the shore? Are you right on the water?
No, we're right on the highway there.
I know that.
We have a nice lake that we built that has one of those big sailboats that is actually very impressive because you don't realize how big they are until you go up and look at it.
Okay. I was just curious because with sea level rise, we do have waterfront, and it is in California. All waterfront is publicly accessible. And I know they don't abide by that in Laguna Beach and stuff like that, but actually all waterfront in California should have public access to it. And so, we're looking at something with the city of South San Francisco, because when we redid our master plan and we got our zoning and creating a public park. Well, that public park is also a sea level rise, like it's where the water can come and, so it's going to take some of our campus that we won't need in the future and give it back to a public use and solve a mitigation.
Amazing. I was going to ask about cross collaboration internally with C-suite and department heads to make these real estate decisions, but I hadn't expanded my mind to collaborating with the cities you're in, and so that's really interesting. But going back to cross-collaborating with various department heads to make these decisions, because we've been saying this is a people business, we're housing people. I'm curious to learn how each of your companies do work, and I know the clock is on 9 minutes and we probably do questions. I don't know how this works, but maybe share, and I think it'd be probably helpful for everyone, some successful stories of working internally to make these big, massive real estate decisions. I know, Kathy, you just went on a trip, right,
Went to Amsterdam and took a steering committee there to really take a deep dive into how NXP can transform their workspace, right? So it was really important. I work for a Dutch company. They do everything by meetings, PowerPoints, and lots of meetings.
And you took the job.
It's just, it is mind-boggling the amount of meetings and the buy-in you have to get from all of the business lines, and then there's HR, and then there's IT and security. It is, you know, you kind of feel like you're in politics, and you're going in and you're trying to get your bill passed,
and socialize
right?
and socialize.
It's very stressful, and but I know that if you have the data and you can present it, and Sara told me a good story about this, is you follow the data, and you put the data in front of them, and they're like, no, that's not true. And then you present them with more data, and you say, why isn't that true? And they eventually go, okay, I guess you're right. So for us, it's being able to present that data in a way that they can comprehend it and then come to terms with it. And I have lately had to tell people, okay, I understand you might have a personal opinion about this, and you are allowed to have your opinion, but the direction of the company is going somewhere else. So can you hold that, right, can you hold that personal opinion and still be on board with us moving in that direction? And to a person, they've all kind of went, ah, okay, yeah, I can do it. So you're right, it costs money. And guess what? Real estate, we don't make money, right? We're not a profit center. As a matter of fact, I use your money. I use the money that your salespeople make to put you into those spaces and fix those spaces. So it's really those sales lines that I have to say, you want this? This is how much it's going to cost. And they go, never mind. And then they lose talent. They can't keep people there. People are unhappy about their workspaces. And in terms, I had a very honest conversation with HR and some other leaders, and they said, our problem is that the people who run the company are old men, and they're caught in the past, okay? And they don't understand that they can mandate the hell out of telling people, you will come back 5 days a week, and everyone will have a desk, and this is the way it's gonna be. It's never going to work. And everybody who's younger than that knows it, and they understand it, and there's just a new way of working. What was that gentleman the other day, the H3, we need to be there. Yeah,
Shout out Phil.
Yes, we got to go there. And so for me, it's really hard. I'm not going to get personal time with Kurt Sievers, the CEO of NXP. I'm just not. I have to get to everybody under him to that level to some extent.
So you're a politician in real estate. You're really just
there has to be a change at the C-suite. There really does. In order for, at least in terms of my company, in order for us to go into the future, we need younger people leading that charge.
The old male pale snail thing is totally true, but I think in addition to that, it's actually our own internal resistance to change as we get older. That's just inherent. And the self-awareness piece.
That's why we need Gen Z in the room, you know.
Yeah, but the self-awareness piece is so relevant.
Let
you have
me
to
give
literally
you
go
an
look at
example.
yourself.
I gave this to them. I said, do you remember sometime after the pandemic when all of a sudden IT came and said, we're taking your phones away because everyone is communicating through Teams, and you can do that on your computer. There will be no more phones. I can tell you everyone over the age of 45 literally had a heart attack. Said, I can't function. I got to have my phone. I won't be able to work. And they came in over a weekend and took away everybody's phones, and there was directions on how to use Teams to make phone calls and stuff. And I asked them, I said, what would happen if I came back and put phones on your desk today? And they went, I wouldn't know how to use it. I couldn't. And I said,
desk phones. I thought she meant like these.
Yeah, no, desk phones. And I said, so remember how quickly that change happened? Y'all kicked and screamed and you cried and you bellyached. But when it happened about three weeks after that, it was seamless. Everyone figured out how to work without their desk phone. If you put that on a young person's desk right now, they would not know how to use it. It's like the kids in the old.
I actually don't know how.
Dial phones. Yep. So change.
And I think this means we have like a couple minutes left for other questions. Is that right?
Yeah, we have some time.
Because it's about you all. It's not about really questions. But
what are your? So we didn't answer. What are we going to do with all this excess space? Have no idea. They told me if I can.
No, the answer
if I can figure it out, I'll be a rock star.
We have the gold standard of corporate real estate professionals in this room, and we don't know is the answer, and it's okay. And I think like Phil and some other people have spoken on the future and strategy, but hopefully there's some rest in we're all kind of figuring, and actually we were talking, Sara, that
What
we
I
have
would
to all
say to
talk
that
together.
is,
Dawn,
from my
you go.
perspective, it's not being, it's whatever you did in the past, which is everyone sublease the space. It's just, that is not going to be the solution going forward. It really is kind of looking at all the various options, of which sublease is one, but it is that partnerships now with groups that maybe you wouldn't have been as upfront with what you were doing. Like when I was talking about what we're doing, to talk with different government agencies, like, we're having these discussions with kind of the government entity within Redwood Shores to understand who's coming to them and saying they're looking for space, or maybe they're getting developers who are said they're interested in looking at what we're doing there. That's what we're doing in London with kind of our excess campus there. It's really just trying to understand what other options are there that people have or people are looking for, where we can really partner with them to kind of turn that vision into a reality. And I think, now listen, there's a lot of collaboration that we have to have with finance on that. I have to have my boss on board who has to get Safra on board and things like that. So there's a lot of, kind of the internal kind of getting people prepared for that. I think, having your data, having a good understanding of the marketplace, being able to tell that story is going to be critical as you do redevelop these campuses and you think about that space. But it also then starts with, that kind of that first step of getting all of your folks into the space that that they're going to need for, not only what you're doing for current, but also having that understanding of are there any future growth plans or any things like that, so you can kind of set yourself up well in step one, while at the back end you're working with different partners to figure out, now what are we going to do here, and what are those new options that we can consider for developing it. Yes.
I think there's a question in the back with a microphone too.
I was just wondering, so like in New York, we have an extra floor that we want to sublease, but the sublease market is terrible, as everyone knows. So my thought was, has anyone decided to take an additional floor and turn it into executive housing or hotel rooms, since everyone's coming for on-site / off-sites anyway?
We are looking at short-term housing. The other thing that I think is interesting is adaptive reuse. I think is fantastic. Also, curated tenancy. So, are there other companies, startups, anything like that, that would be beneficial? We've got a space that we are like the first tenant, and we work with the landlord to say, let us, like normally we don't even want to associate our name with something, but no, let us curate the tenancy, because if you get tenants in here that are not beneficial to us, then it doesn't help us. But if you get, if we get the right computational science, companies in here, or the right incubators in here, that is beneficial. So, is there a play where you look at what other companies, what's the ecosystem that would be really beneficial to you, and you give them the space, or it's a really low rent, but the benefit is different. So that's just something that we're considering.
I think that's when I think about our Redwood Shores campus and just kind of that ecosystem of startups and developers, that there's a conversation with our corporate development team, which handles a lot of the M&A activity.
Yeah,
to say,
exactly.
hey, are there companies
join
you
us.
might be interested in seeing how they're doing, that might be interested in being right next door to
and you get right of first refusal and on the patents,
all these other
kind of thing.
Outside of the United States, I know we have a couple of our facilities, non-manufacturing, but they're fairly large, where we have quantum computing in there, because that is really important to semiconductors. We're sharing stuff with automotive
It's very
makers.
important to
It's very important, but even locally in Austin, I mean, I'm working with the economic development, they call it Opportunity Austin, and working with them, and who's coming to Austin, who's looking for space, can we get in front of them? I mean, the local city council, all the time they're getting questions for companies who want to relocate their headquarters to Texas. We're hoping to draw them into Austin. So I have a lot of empty space. I have a lot of ideas of what can be done with it. I just want to sell it all, give it to somebody else, and let them worry about it. And then I can put us into much smaller lease space. We'll come lease space from you, and we'll be great. We'll be good friends.
We have a good cafeteria.
Yes, I know. So there, and I don't have to build it and pay for it.
I don't know if there's another
Do we have time? So we've been talking about the kind of tear down, right? We have so much space. You guys are trying to work down to less. I'm just curious, even as a thought exercise, with you talking about engagement with executives, if you took away the phones, so to speak, like just walked into the C-suite with a big map that was blank and said, all our offices are gone now, like you have a chance to put them back. How confident are you, like, in how that exercise would go? You're like, you could just recreate the map. You could put smaller dots where you have big dots, or new dots in new places, and what would the delta be between what your portfolio is like and that hypothetical future, if you think they'd even know how to do that exercise without
We're
tons
doing
of
it
help.
right now. We're having this conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, it's
I can find the clip
moderated
art of a
this
blank map.
panel.
But yeah, I'm not sure. What would they do just as a set? That's the horizon 3 of like your
Yes.
physical footprint.
And we have, so the chairman of the board of Roche Group happens to really like urban planning and architecture. And I was not excited about this, but you know what? He's actually pretty good at it. He's done it on a bunch of sites, and so talk about access to C-suite. Yeah, we got access to C-suite during COVID, but now working with the chairman of the board and that's actually very helpful. And so when we do that, when we look at the global picture, it's also we have pharmaceuticals and diagnostics, and which makes sense because you diagnose the disease, you treat the disease. What if we brought them together? What if what if we start looking at site consolidation as a benefit to the business, not just lower OpEx? How do we start to lean into what does the business need in 40 years? And that's, I think, one of the benefits of being owned by a European company. Their art of the long view is much longer than ours. I'm thinking 10 years aren't good. No, 40 years, 50 years. So that's been a really interesting exercise. And I'm very fortunate that it's not about drive down cost. It's about drive up value.
That's